So what I'll be doing is a combination of sharing a PowerPoint presentation and also sharing the screens in the software so that you can actually see where to find things in the software. Just so that you get a good feel for what's possible and what, I suppose what's not possible in the software. There's always so much in the software that people are unaware is in there, and so the more that we can show you, the more that you can see what's around. And if you do have any questions, please do pop them into the chat, which I'm sure Hassan's already told you about, or you're probably getting pinged about it at the top of the screen. You can open up that chat bar, and so write any questions in there. Might just wait one more minute because we are expecting a few more to join us. It's amazing how a minute seems like an eternity when you're sitting waiting for a clock to tick over. So I might actually make a start now. We've got quite a few people on the call. So this is a session relating to version 2022.1, which is a version that most of you should have in your software, in your installation already. There's a number of features that are in the software. This presentation has basically been put together by Louise Mulqueen, one of our consultants who's actually on the line. And I'm just presenting it because that's what I do. So again, but if you do have any questions about the stuff we're presenting, please do pop something in the chat. So let's head on in. So this release actually contains over 58 improvements and new features, and really I can't cover all of those in this session, so I'm really only going to touch on 5 of them. I'm going to talk a little bit about CRM, and I'm going to talk about cases and contacts. I'm going to talk about some new bank reconciliation improvements. I'm also going to talk about a new option in manufacturing, and the manufacturing option is around control points, and I'll show you that as well. With sales orders, we've got this fantastic new function called blanket sales order, which was already there from purchase orders point of view, and I loved it from the purchase orders point of view. So I'm pleased that it's also there in sales orders. And also from a project perspective, we also have the project billing. So you may say to me, where can I find this information out, Di? So let me just escape, and I'll actually show you, and we'll include this in our release in our chat. I'll get Hassan to pop this into the chat, but the release notes are available on the internet, and as you can see, it's a rather large document of 192 pages. A lot of it is stuff that you might not need to know, like web services and API performance, but there is some interesting information in there about commerce. So we now have it connected to Shopify and BigCommerce, so that's also in there. And there's also information relating to field services as well. So there's a few different things that are in there that are useful for you to have. So I can see Hassan's put that note in there now so that you can actually go and have a look at those yourself later. So I'll present the slideshow again. So let's look at some of the things that are in there. Now, always from within the software, you can actually go to the release notes from within the software. From within the help menu at the top of the screen, you can actually type in release notes and it will actually take you to this screen. Now, I must admit, I haven't found this screen all that easy to look for or to find where to find the openings about it. Just be aware that it's probably better to use, again, the URL that we sent to you. And there is also a video that we can also release and show to you as well. But all of the release notes are in there. They tend to have a major release, which is noted by the 0.1, and then there's subsequent releases and hot fixes, and they'll tell you what they're for. So if you see on the screen, there's actually a release for a hot fix as well. When we do talk about releases, you'll notice that this is 2022.1. MYOB is based upon a product out of the States called Acumatica. So the 2022.1 is actually based upon the calendar year of 2022. But from an Australian point of view, MYOB like to make sure that the base product the base product from Acumatica has actually had a little bit of time in the marketplace before they then do some checking around it in our environment. So in the MYOB space. So typically when you see something like 2022.1, we're usually a little bit behind, and you'll see that they're also starting to talk about versions 2022.2, but you won't have those as yet, and that's why we've elected to go with this. So let's go on to the first item that I've selected. So the first thing is that there are cases in the software. Now, cases is a function that not many people use, but it has great applicability, and it's great for when your customers are looking to return information or looking to lodge complaints or looking to record anything. We can actually in the software record a case. So in this case, we might have a support services case. And so they've added a new function where I can actually record in here that I can actually select the employee as the case contact. And in doing so, what that then means is that I can actually, on my cases list, actually have the owner as being me associated with this case. And these cases could be any of your cases or anything that's useful for you. Where cases are particularly useful is if you allow your customers to have access to the customer portal. If you give them access to the customer portal, then your customers can actually go in and they can actually log a case, which then goes into the unassigned queue. So you can see here that we've got an unassigned queue. And in the unassigned queue, it then pops up a reminder to someone who's managing that process of allocating the cases, or you can actually have them, you can actually also set up an auto allocation of cases. So where would I find that in the software? And I just happen to have it up here. Again, if you do a search in the top of the screen and type in the word cases, you'll actually see that we've got some support activity cases. So that should be available in your menus. Okay, I'm just going to close that menu. So here is my cases screen. What is also important to note on this screen is that we're also making use, despite the fact that this is a grid screen, we're also making use of what we call a sidebar. So if I wanted to look a little bit further into this, I could actually do the cases button and it will actually slide open that sidebar. And since I haven't done it, it's a little bit slow, but it actually shows me a little bit more information about the case that I've actually got highlighted. So if I had some more screenshots or images recorded in here by the person, I'd actually see that information showing up. And as I move through these different options, you'll notice I've tried everything, but the printer still doesn't print. So the cases is a really good function that you can actually take to your customers if it's something that's in your environment that would be useful to you. I'll go back to my presentation. So, it's just repeating the screens that I had. So the next thing I want to talk about is Bank Rec. So there's two new features in Bank Rec that are useful for you. First of all, there's a new screen. So the new screen looks something like this, which is an automatic processing of bank transactions. So when you actually upload your bank transactions from bank feeds or things like that, this will actually automatically process the transactions. And as per most of the screens that are processing screens in MYOB Advanced, we also have a little button to the side of this, which I'm highlighting here, but I'll actually highlight on the next screen, which is the schedule button. So what this also allows us to do is we could actually start and do a whole lot of auto matching, and the auto matching so we could have the bank feeds coming in, then we can start to do an auto matching of all the bank feeds, and in doing that process we can have a schedule set up on that so that in fact you don't actually have to do anything. The scheduling process will actually happen on a scheduled basis. So you could have reading in the transactions automatically and then also moving on to that automatically. Now I can't actually show you that in my database. I'll just show you where the screens are because we actually don't have Bank Rec set up and I don't think we're actually loading down any information. So just be aware that the screens are there and that you can use them. So the second part associated with Bank Rec, and this is actually launched when I actually go and open up a screen is the fact that in BankRec we can now match the bank transaction, one bank transaction, to multiple accounts receivable or multiple accounts payable documents. So, you know, what does that look like? So it looks like this, where I've got one transaction on my process bank transaction side, and when I'm matching it to invoices, I've then got two documents that I'm attaching it to. And so that's new in this release. And if I then go on to the next screen and just show it also from an accounts receivable point of view, I've got multiple documents ticked here. Okay. So it's a new feature that's in the software. If I show it to you from the software point of view, this is the screen here, which is Process Bank Transactions. Let's look at it on the menu. It's actually in the middle of the screen under Processes. With the screen open, I can now see that I've got some transactions that are waiting there to be allocated. I can open up that screen. I could have selected that bank account and done auto matching. If we're talking about those bulk entries down here, I can now see that this transaction has a transaction associated with it. And I can also go through and do the other normal things that you would normally use in BankRec. So if you're not using BankRec or you're not using bank feeds, I'd certainly suggest that you investigate it. There's a lot of really good features in it, and it does make processing your BankRec a lot faster and a lot easier if you use some of that automation that's associated with it. Okay, let's now look at my next topic. So let me present my screen again, my presentation. So this is more directed to the people that are using the manufacturing edition of the software. So for those of you who don't know, MYOB Advanced has a manufacturing edition, and what that actually allows us to do is actually schedule manufacturing based upon critical items that we may have to manufacture. So we can actually add into this, we may have a process that has multiple stages in the production. So we get the raw materials, we cut the raw materials, we assemble them, and each of these are different work centres. So in that case here, if I show you the next screen, so here I have a production order, and this production has multiple run times in it. You can't actually see the description of those run times, but I'll show you in the software. So I can actually mark these as a control point. And what that means is if I haven't produced enough of the quantity, it will actually stop me and actually give me an error and say, hold on a minute, you can't produce 80 from 70. That just doesn't work. So it actually stops and it doesn't allow me to go any further. So the total quantity, so in this case, I've said, okay, well, I'm going to move a quantity of 80 of these items of this grey matter, Z series, into stock. So it's saying to me, no, hold on, you can't do that because you've only produced 70, so you can't move 80. And so that actually stops that as a process. So again, if we just have a quick look at the manufacturing, and I have actually opened it up here, you can see here I've got a production order. My production order is divided into two very distinct operations. I've got assembly and I've also got testing. That within the assembly, I've got a whole series of units or items that I'm actually doing. I can actually set these to be control points. I can't actually because this document is released, but it was a good document to show you. I could have a whole series of steps recorded in here and tools and overheads and outside processes. So it is a full manufacturing solution that will take you from a process of distribution or something to I'm actually creating stuff inside my own environment. And so these, and I'm not quite sure why I'm getting the circle of death happening there, but just be aware that you can, in your critical operations now, actually use the process where you can actually say this is a critical point and stop until something actually happens, and we're not going to move on from there until we've matched up that critical point. Okay, so I have no steps after all that. We are actually running on a demo website from MYOB, and so unfortunately in our case our demo website is just a tad slow at some point in time. Yours should be a lot faster. So let me go back to my presentation. So the next feature that I actually wanted to talk about is sales orders. So I'm not sure if any of you have heard of blanket orders. So a blanket order is a process where you may enter into an agreement with a customer, or if we're talking about blanket orders for purchasing, where you say to that customer, okay, over time we want to place an order, and we're going to place an order for, say, 100 of these items, but we actually want to schedule various different shipping dates. So from a blanket sales order, we automatically generate a sales order for the quantity. So we're still recording in the system that we're expecting that's for the year. We're going to generate an overall for this customer. We're going to set the price, and we're going to have the price set as per the blanket sales order, but the customer's agreed to buy 100 items. And so therefore, at the various different times or stage times that you've made an agreement for, you can then schedule those order and shipment dates. And from the blanket, you can then create the child orders, which you can either do from here, or if you've got lots of blanket orders in the go, you can actually generate all of your child orders based upon your scheduled shipment dates. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So I've got a sales order screen here, and in my sales order screen I've got a customer here, and you can see I've got a new order type called blanket order. And as I open this blanket order up, what you'll actually see is I've got one order on this. So I'm ordering 120, and I'm setting a price in here. So this is an order for the whole year. And if I look at the line details, what I can actually see in the line details is the various different days that they've agreed to it, or the dates that they actually want the items shipped, and the quantities that they actually want to ship. So it's useful to track it from the point of view of not entering in a whole. So this doesn't get taken into account when I'm actually talking about scheduling or doing replenishment information. It's more about recording the fact that I've got this blanket order here. I'm going to set the price and make sure that the price stays the same, and then have scheduled child orders being generated from those orders. So it's a really good way to just control those orders, and you can then create those child orders also from a process within here as well, where you can actually generate the child orders. And I haven't looked at that. It may not be on my screen set up. Anyway, you know that it's in there. So let's look at projects. So the next topic that I do want to cover off is relating to projects. So again, I'm not sure how many of you are actually using project. In the past, when we've used project billing, we've always had to do it based upon amounts. So if you want to do a bill based upon a project, so you're going to add some time or add some quantities to a project, and then you then want to bill based upon those quantities or those amounts, we typically only had it based upon an amount. So what we now have is the option to, on a line-by-line basis, whether it be discovery and realisation, to either bill based upon an amount or a percentage complete of that. So you can see here we've got percentage complete, or via a quantity. And what that then means is that we can then start to build up a project and then associate these invoices with a project, so we can actually see the profitability of each of our projects. Again, I'm not sure how many of you are using projects, but this is how it would actually appear on the screen. So I have my project, which is an NPC call center. It's around the software presentation to the call center. I've got a revenue budget. Down here, I've got these ones set to be amount. So based upon it being 25%, my pending invoice amount would be this, but based upon a percentage completed or based upon a quantity completed, which I can type in. Whoops, sorry, went to the wrong end. Let me just escape. I can then go through and pick up that, sorry, now I've got to go back to here. There, picked up the wrong thing. I can then go through and generate it. So if we talk about generating, and sorry, I've got a phone ringing in my head. I forgot to put myself on Do Not Disturb. So just let me wait and I'll put that on Do Not Disturb. So here's a real live example in my data. So in my data here, I've said, okay, I've got a pending invoice quantity of 50. So it said, okay, so based upon that, your percentage complete is something and your pending invoice amount is this. So I can come in and I can change this quantity to be 10. And it then says, okay, based upon you saying that the pending invoice quantity is that, our percentage complete is that, and the pending invoice amount is 1,000. Okay, so that's based upon me saying that maybe I should actually change that to be 2 hours, because it is only expected to be 4 hours. And so now we're now getting a more appropriate amount of 50% complete with our $200 value. Okay, and so very quick session today. We're now at a point of questions, and over to you if you have any questions. I do note in the chat that there's been no questions posed, but please go ahead and write something in quickly. We wanted to keep these sessions quick and simple and cover off on topics. And so what we'd like you to do is for you to send through any queries or any questions you might have, and just make us aware of these general topics. Ideally, we'd be looking for new features that we know. So we know that there's going to be some features happening in payroll. So our next Watercooler is on May 24th, and that will start to cover off some of the things relating to end of year with payroll and some of the things that you can do around reconciliation. So, but in the meantime, if you've got any other ideas or thoughts, or if you want to take yourself off mic, off camera and ask me a question, please do so, and if I can't answer it, I'll take it on notice and take it to one of the team, or alternately send through your ideas to helpdesk@acaciacs.com.au. And if there's no questions, I can see that people are there. Maybe you've all got a mouthful of sandwich or something like that. Then I'm basically finished. So thank you for joining us. Any questions?
I think we got someone typing in.
Well, I think we do have someone typing some things in, so we might just
a thank you.
And we'll be running these more frequently so that you can actually come along and see different things. It's not meant to be too much of an information overload, but just to show you some of the ideas that are available in the software. I think that might be about it. Hassan, what's your thoughts?
Looks like it. I think I'll end the recording now. And if anyone's got any questions, please drop us an email at any time.
Yes, please do.